You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 642 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. That song you're hearing right now is, of course, Leave the Lights On, from our good friends in Passafire. You can check those guys out anywhere you get your music. And today we got a lot to get to, basically just going to hit the ground running here. I want to talk a little bit more about Vincent Trocheck and how he fits into this New York Ranger lineup. You know, where might he line up as far as opening night line combinations are concerned? Will he be on the top power play unit, the second power play unit, etc., etc.? We'll get to all that in just a second. We will also discuss a pair of Ranger free agent signings. That would be Turner Elson as well as Andy Welinski, who each have two-way contracts with the New York Rangers after, signing during this free agency period here. But we start with, once again, kind of the man of the hour here, Vincent Trocheck. Rangers have signed a couple of different free agents since the window opened a little bit less than a week ago at this point. But by far, the headline grabber is certainly Vincent Trocheck. And as far as, trying to figure out the line combinations right now, I'm going to do my best. I think for right now, we've got to operate under the assumption that Tyler Motte will not be back with this team next season. I'm not 100% convinced one way or the other, but I think the odds are against it at this point. We'll see. It is interesting that he's still kind of lingering out there. But as far as opening night line combinations are concerned, I think this is what I would go with. So top line, I would go with Mika Zibanejad centering Chris Kreider on the left wing, Alexis Lafreniere on the right wing. Now, with Lafreniere, in the past, there have been times where I've been a little bit hesitant to, kind of move him over to the right wing whenever I've been trying to pitch line combination ideas, but I think he's kind of proven that he can handle it. There was a stretch last season where he was playing with Mika and with Kreider, and he had one of the best streaks that he's had since coming into the NHL while playing the right wing. So that kind of alleviated my concerns there, and I think Lafreniere, him and Mika, they have sneaky good chemistry, and I'd like to see the Rangers be able to take advantage of that at some point this upcoming season. For the second line, I've got Trocheck centering Panarin on the left wing, Kakko on the right wing. I know Kakko at times, he can be very frustrating, but at a certain point, I gotta just kind of say, sink or swim to Kaapo Kakko. He's gonna get an opportunity to play with two excellent players. Artemi Panarin, that alone should give him a little bit of a boost. We've seen everybody from Ryan Strome to Jesper Foss to Colin Blackwell to pretty much everybody get the Panarin bump. Those players all contribute in their own right, but playing with Artemi Panarin naturally should just make you that much better. So Kaapo Kakko is going to get his chance this year. He gets to play right wing, which is obviously his position, and he plays with somebody who brings a lot of grit in Vincent Trocheck. I got to put Kaapo Kakko in position to succeed, and I think that's one of the best ways to do it is to put him out there with Artemi Panarin. Sink or swim, he gets, 20, 25 games, whatever it might be. If he's not getting it done and a shakeup is needed, then so be it. But for right now, I'm going with Trocheck centering Panarin and Kakko on the second line. The third line, this is where it kind of gets interesting. I think I got to go with Hedl at center. And I know on here, I've talked in the past about maybe moving Hedl off of center and allowing him to play wing because I just think he's better suited for that. But the Rangers aren't going to do that. I think they've proven by now that they see Hedl as a center for better or worse, and that's where he's going to play. So I've kind of just given up on it. So give me Hedl at center. I'm going to go with Sammy Blais on the left wing. And this is where it gets kind of tricky because Blais, for the most part, has only played right wing. I am not sure if he could handle left wing. I mean, that's probably a question that the Ranger coaching staff will assess. If they want to try putting Blais on the third line here, you put him on the left wing, and you put Vitaly Krasov on the right wing. Blais can kind of do a little bit of the dirty work. He's the big guy, and he can set up, the smaller guys, the more skilled guys, by, digging some pucks out of corners and whatnot. So I like that as the third line. You're certainly not going to put Krasov on the fourth line. And of course, with Krasov, there's certainly the possibility that he ends up getting traded, sometime between now and the start of this upcoming season. I think it's more likely than not, but we will see how that shakes out. And the fourth line, I'm going to go with Carpenter, centering Gaudreau on the left wing, Ryan Reeves on the right wing. That's a really nice checking line, big physical, tough line. and a combination that I think as far as a fourth line is concerned, that's got to be up there in the NHL with, one of the better ones, I would think at least. And that leaves Hunt and Gauthier as healthy scratches. Gauthier's another one. I think there's a very good chance that he gets dealt before the season starts. He's actually requested a trade, and at a certain point, you just kind of get squeezed out of the lineup, and I think that's what we're going to see with Gauthier. Hunt, hardworking player. I'm sure he'll mix in at times, but I would kind of have him as the odd man out. The other option, to just run through this real quick, you could keep the kids together and go with them as your second line, and then kind of super stack the top line with Mika centering Panarin on the left wing, Kreider on the right wing, and then you have Trocheck centering the third line with presumably Blais and Kravtsov. I mean, you could go that way, but for me, Vincent Trocheck is the big free agent signing for the Rangers this offseason, so I'd like to see him in a top 6 role. If you really want to keep the kids together, you can do that, and you can make them the second line. I slightly lean toward having Trocheck in that top 6 role there, and Hedl can center the third line. But we'll see. The Rangers obviously have some options. That's always a nice thing. And in just a second, we're going to kind of dive into this a little bit deeper as it pertains to Vincent Trocheck. Once again, he's the headline grabber. He's the big prize get of the free agent period here for the New York Rangers. He's obviously the highest priced free agent that they brought in this offseason. So I want to continue talking about him a little bit and discuss, where he fits in. We already kind of penciled him to the second line with Panarin and with Kakko, but I want to talk about some other roles he can play and some other things that he can bring to the table for the New York Rangers. And we will do all of that in just a second. But first, I just want to let you guys know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Built Bar. From the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You've probably tried the amazing Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given Coconut Brownie Chunk the Puffs treatment. That's right. The Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar flavor you love in a deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. Coconut Brownie Chunk Puffs are only here for a limited time. Go to Built.com right now to make sure that you don't miss out. They are going fast because they taste amazing. All Built Bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. Delicious coconut, rich sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow. Stop fantasizing. Get to Built.com to order your box of Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Puffs right now. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15. All right, just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July 18, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18 on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, so we're past, the initial excitement of Vincent Trocheck signing with the New York Rangers. I mean, I'm still very excited about it. He's one of my favorite non-Rangers in the league and has been for quite some time. And I think, it's a little bit of a polarizing move, but I think most Ranger fans are mostly on board with the signing of Vincent Trocheck. I know a couple of people, look at the 7 years and they're like, wow, that's a lot to give to Vincent Trocheck. Yes, it is. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second as well. But, just to continue to just talk about Trocheck and how he fits into this team and what he brings to the table. The first thing I want to do is kind of compare him to Ryan Strome, because Strome's the guy that's been in that second line center role, which I think is going to be tailor-made for Vincent Trocheck this season. There's a perception right now, I think, that, Strome's probably the slightly better offensive player. He'll end up with more points than a player like Vincent Trocheck, but Vincent Trocheck has the better all-around game. When you factor in the fact that he can, kill penalties, he's a good defensive forward, he's very good on the face-off circle. I think for sure Trocheck has the better all-around game. But even with just the offense, again, because I do think there's a perception that Strome would probably end up with more points in this role with the Rangers than Trocheck will end up getting. I'm not 100% convinced the more that I've looked at it, though, because, and even if, Strome would have ended up with a few more points, it would be just that, just a few more points than what Trocheck would get. I don't think going from Strome to Trocheck is a massive offensive downgrade, if it's even a downgrade at all. But with Strome, last year, he had 54 points in 74 games. Trocheck had 51 points in 81 games. So as far as, points per game is concerned, Strome's got him beat by a little bit, but keep in mind, Strome has benefited from the fact that he's played with Artemi Panarin the last handful of seasons. Trocheck's had some good line mates as well, over there with the Carolina Hurricanes, but I think, obviously with Trocheck, just like anybody else, the fact that you're playing with Artemi Panarin, or at least it looks like he's going to be playing with Artemi Panarin, that will give you a bump. And if, Trocheck ends up playing on the Ranger top power play unit, oh yeah, that'll give him a heck of a bump because, as we know, that Ranger top power play unit is absolutely lethal. They score a ton of goals. The Rangers are very reliant on that unit to produce a lot of goals and a lot of offense, probably to a fault because the Rangers do have to get better 5v5, but that kind of leads me in very nicely to the next thing that I wanted to talk about with Trocheck, and that's his fit on the power play. I think at this point, looking at the Ranger depth chart, it looks, I don't want to say obvious. I mean, it kind of does look obvious. I think Trocheck will be on one of the two power play units. He's got a shot at maybe replacing Ryan Strome on the top unit. You look at that top unit, absolutely lethal, just weapons all around the ice between, Panarin, Mika, Kreider, Fox, and, in years past, Strome, and now there's an opening there. Maybe Trocheck gets a shot at it, maybe Hedl, maybe Lafreniere, we'll see. With Trocheck, though, if he's going to replace Ryan Strome, then that would kind of put him in the bumper role, which is fine. I think certainly he could handle that. But I do wonder if maybe Trocheck would be a little bit better served playing on the second power play unit and kind of playing the Chris Kreider role down there, the guy that goes to the net, creates havoc, cleans up all the loose change in front of the net, sets screens and whatnot, because obviously Trocheck, a hard-nosed player, a grinder, I think that would fit his style a little bit more than bumper. And like I said, I think he can play either role just fine, but, we're almost conditioned as Ranger fans at this point to think that, the top power play unit is just elite, and the second power play unit is, you're just not going to get a whole lot from them. That's kind of where we've gotten. Now, that second power play unit for the Rangers did play a little bit better toward the end of last season and even scored a couple of goals in the playoffs as well, but there's not anything set in stone. There's nothing, that's been decreed since the beginning of time that your top power play unit has to be so much better than your second power play unit. And of course, last year, that was the case for the Rangers. And as a result of that, the top unit got a heck of a lot more playing time than did the bottom unit. But with all that said, you can spread the wealth a little bit if you want. I know some people talk about the idea of, well, maybe put Panarin and Mika on two different power play units because they both play the left side so well. They both just let shots rip from the left side there. I would not do that. For starters, I like the idea of Panarin and Mika getting at least some ice time together. And if they're not going to be line mates for 5v5, then I at least want them out there together on the power play. And I don't want to mess with that top power play unit too much. I mean, Strome is gone, but the other four are still there. The big four, Fox, Panarin, Mika, Kreider, I think they should all still be on the top power play unit and all still be together based on what they did this past season. But you should still have enough, if you're the Rangers, to put out a heck of a second power play unit when you look at the players that are left after the four I just mentioned. And for right now, for the purposes of this exercise, let's just pencil in Alexis Lafreniere to that top power play unit. I think it's time to sort of take the training wheels off, whatever training wheels are still left for Alexis Lafreniere, play him on that top power play unit, really get him going. I think a lot of Ranger fans are really looking for him to explode in year 3 here. Give him every opportunity to do so by putting him on the top power play unit with that awesome quartet that we saw just make magic all last season whenever the Rangers had a power play. But if you do that, you still have a second power play unit potentially of, we'll start on the blue line. We'll start with Miller and Trouba. We'll have two defensemen on the ice. You could have Vincent Trocheck, Filip Hedl, and Capo Caco rounding out the quintet there. Trocheck can go out there, do some of the dirty work in front of the net, look for redirections, look for rebounds, stuff like that. You could see Filip Hedl in the bumper role. We saw him play that role multiple times when Ryan Strome was out of the lineup last season. Filip Hedl would sub in to the top unit. And, Capo Caco, you got to have him out there, too. I mean, he's, again, somebody that the Rangers are really trying to get going this season. I think sink or swim is a good philosophy to have when it comes to Capo Caco right now. Put him in every conceivable situation to succeed that you possibly can. And obviously getting him some work on the man advantage definitely helps. But I think Trocheck, again, you've got some options. That's something that he really brings to the table, just kind of a Swiss Army knife and somebody that even when it comes to the power play unit, you have the choice of whether you want to put him into Strome's old role and put him up there with the top unit, or spread the wealth a little bit, go with him on the second unit, and use him as kind of, in the Kreider role on the second power play unit. It's an interesting situation. I think I would slightly prefer the latter. I like him in the Kreider role on the second unit, and I like getting Alexis Lafreniere some time on that top power play unit. But again, Trocheck, one of those guys, by his very nature, by the very brand of hockey that he plays, you're going to have some options as far as how you'd like to line up and how you'd like to deploy your players. Figure we can leave you guys with a couple of quotes as it pertains to Vincent Trocheck, then move on to a couple of other things before we call it a day here. But, Trocheck, part of the reason why he signed with the Rangers, he said as much, is because of Gerard Gallant. Those two were together for a few years when Gallant was the coach of the Florida Panthers, and obviously Trocheck was playing there. But this is what Trocheck had to say as far as, playing with the Rangers, signing with the Rangers, and how it had something to do with Gerard Gallant. This is what he had to say. It had a lot to do with it. I spent some time with Turk in Florida. I got to know him really well, and I had a really good relationship with him down there. He's one of my favorite coaches that I've ever had, so having him in New York was another huge draw. And yeah, I think that, a lot of guys that have played for Gallant seem to really like him. I don't think there have been too many players that have had any ill will to speak of him. The Rangers this past season obviously played very, very hard for him. I don't really get all the Gallant criticism. At times there's a couple things he does where I'll scratch my head a little bit, and, I'll be fair on here. If I think he makes a mistake, like, for example, making Capo Caco a healthy scratch for Game 6. I think that was a mistake. I'll say it, but for the most part, I don't know how you can argue with what this guy has done so far with the New York Rangers. And now, he's attracting free agents to the team. If you really like Vincent Trocheck and you're happy about this signing, Trocheck said it himself. Part of the reason why he came here was because of Gerard Gallant. So, yeah, that's another feather in Gallant's cap as far as I'm concerned. This is what Trocheck also had to say about his playing style. I'm a little bit grittier, hard-nosed, but still have the ability to bring some talent and skill to the game. I like to think of myself as a 200-foot centerman who plays both sides of the ice pretty well. I definitely won't shy away from the corners. And again, I know there's some Ranger fans out there who, they're scratching their head a little bit when it comes to Vincent Trocheck. What's so special about this guy? I don't get it. Why is everybody so obsessed with him? I think once we all start to see him play on a night in and night out basis, most Ranger fans are going to warm up to this guy pretty quickly. Now, you do have to give him more than a game and a half. If he's halfway through the second period of the second game of the season and he doesn't have any points, just relax. It'll come, all right? But, that's another thing. The Rangers, obviously, they'll have some new players this season and they'll have to rediscover the chemistry. Last year, the Rangers got off to a slow start offensively, and, these guys can't play together, but it'll eventually get there, and I think Vincent Trocheck is going to be a huge part of this game. Again, I just think Ranger fans will warm up to him very quickly. He's kind of an old-school, hard-nosed player, plays with a little bit of an edge. He'll get in your face after a play. Just an exceptionally well-rounded game, and any longtime listeners of this podcast, you guys know I've been a big-time Trocheck fan for a long time. He's been one of my favorite non-Rangers in this league for several seasons. I just really appreciate the type of player that can do a little bit of everything to help you win, and I really think Vincent Trocheck is that guy. And like I said, if I'm wrong, I'll come on here and admit it. I don't think I'm going to be wrong about this, though. For anybody that's still not so sure about Vincent Trocheck, I think he's going to do a really nice job for this team, and I think, like I said, Ranger fans should warm up to him fairly quickly. And as I alluded to just a second ago, I know there's some Ranger fans who do have some trepidation about giving a 7-year deal to Vincent Trocheck. And this is what Chris Drury had to say about it. He said the Rangers were very comfortable going to 7 years with Vincent Trocheck, which, by the way, is the maximum. When you sign a free agent from another team, you're no longer allowed to give them more than 7 years. If you re-sign your own guy before free agency starts, you can go up to 8 years. The Flames are trying to do that with Johnny Gaudreau, and obviously it didn't work out for them. So the Rangers go to the maximum limit as far as years are concerned with Vincent Trocheck. And Drury, as far as why the Rangers did that, he said it helped with average annual value. So I certainly appreciate the honesty there, and that was kind of my hypothesis for a while. When I saw this contract and the terms of the contract, and you see, wow, 7 years for Vincent Trocheck. Because, I'll admit, at first glance, that seemed like a lot. And even right now, it still seems like a bit of a lot for Vincent Trocheck going to 7 years. But you figure, the Rangers, like we've been talking about on here, they have a little bit of a cap crunch. And so the way to kind of get around that a little bit as it pertains to pursuing a free agent the quality of Vincent Trocheck is you offer him more years and you bring the average annual value down. You do that as a little bit of a compromise on both sides. Vincent Trocheck will take less money per year if you give him 1 or 2 extra years at the end of the contract. So I'm completely fine with it. This is the way for the Rangers to get their guy and put together a team that they think can compete for a Stanley Cup next season. So yeah, it's just the price that needs to be paid. And I know there's a lot of people, oh, this team overpaid for that team overpaid for that guy. This guy's not worth that much money. Look, unrestricted free agency, that's kind of the name of the game. You almost have to overpay at least a little bit because all these players are free and able to talk to any of the 32 NHL teams. You're up against a lot of other potential suitors, so you kind of have to overpay to get your guy more often than not when it comes to unrestricted free agency in this league. And did the Rangers overpay a little bit for Trocheck? Yeah, probably a little bit, but that's the name of the game. That's the going rate for a player of his quality, and that's how you get him to come to the New York Rangers instead of, I don't know, the New York Islanders. They haven't done anything in free agency. Maybe they would have been in on Vincent Trocheck if the Rangers didn't, make their move there and get their guys. So, again, I'm completely fine with it, and I think a lot of Ranger fans, even people questioning this move, like I said, I think you'll eventually come around to it and learn to like Vincent Trocheck as a very important member of this team. And like I said in the intro, we're going to turn our attention to some other things. We're going to talk about a couple of small free agent signings that the New York Rangers made. That would be Turner Elson and Andy Welinski. We'll talk about everything they've done in their hockey careers and what they bring to the table for the Rangers, and if there's a chance that they could end up making an impact for the Rangers at some point this upcoming season, and we will do that in just a second. All right, let's go ahead and turn our attention to a couple of minor signings by the Rangers in the free agency period. That would be Turner Elson as well as Andy Welinski. We'll go ahead and we'll start with Welinski. Welinski is a defenseman. 29 years old, stands 6'1", 205 pounds. He has a righty shot, and the Rangers have given him a 1-year, 2-way contract for $750,000. He will get $750K from the Rangers in the NHL, and he will get $400K when he's in the minors. And he was a third-round pick by the Ducks all the way back in 2011. He went number 83 overall. Hasn't really been able to make much of an impact in the NHL. I mean, you take somebody in the third round, you hope that he eventually becomes a staple of your franchise. Never really happened with Andy Welinski. He has skated in just 46 career games. They are all with the Anaheim Ducks, scored 1 goal and 5 assists. He also appeared in 3 playoff games with the Ducks, and he actually did not appear in the NHL last season. Spent the whole season with the Stockton Heat of the AHL, which is the minor league affiliate of the Calgary Flames. I don't think the Rangers see him as much more than just organizational depth, somebody that, if there's an injury in the lineup and they need to call somebody up for, just a couple of games, 3 or 4 games, maybe Andy Welinski can be that guy. And if nothing else, he's somebody that provides a little bit of a veteran presence for the Hartford Wolf Pack. Obviously, by their very nature, AHL teams are going to have a lot of young players, a lot of prospects, a lot of guys hoping to eventually make it to the NHL and have long, successful careers in the NHL. I'm sure Andy Welinski still wants that for himself, although at this point, again, 29 years old and has only played in 46 career games. The odds of him becoming like a true bona fide NHL regular are probably against him. It's probably not all that likely to happen. Never say never. You never know what can happen. With the Rangers, how crowded it is on their blue line, I don't expect him to ever become a staple of the Ranger lineup. But again, for what this signing is, just organizational depth, somebody that is a veteran. If you really need to call somebody up, you can do it. And again, somebody that can kind of lead the way for some of these young guys on the Hartford Wolf Pack. So a small signing for the Rangers, but one that I think makes sense. You have to round out your AHL roster, and I think Andy Welinski is a fine choice for that. Again, bringing a veteran presence to the Wolf Pack. The other signing by the Rangers, 29-year-old left winger Turner Elson. Looks like he also plays some center, although he is predominantly a left winger. Most of the websites that I've been on have him listed as a left winger. He signs a 2-year, 2-way contract that has an average annual value of $762,500. He goes 6 feet tall, 195 pounds. He actually went undrafted, but he entered the league with the Calgary Flames and has basically just kind of bounced around the AHL ever since. Last year was probably his best of his career as far as the AHL is concerned. He scored 21 goals, dished out 24 assists for a total of 45 points in 73 games with the Grand Rapids Griffins, once again of the AHL. The Griffins are the minor league affiliate of the Detroit Red Wings, and he had actually been with the Griffins for 5 seasons and has been an alternate captain with the Griffins for all of that time. For his minor league career, because he's played much more minor league hockey than he has NHL hockey. In fact, he's played 469 career games in the AHL. He has played 3 games in the NHL. But for his minor league career, once again, 469 games, 95 goals, 115 assists, so 210 points in 469 games. He is also a plus 29 for his career in the AHL, and he has scored another 6 points in 10 playoff games. And, I mentioned that he hasn't really seen much more than just a quick cup of coffee in the NHL. There's not really a whole lot to speak of here. He made his NHL debut back in 2015-2016 with the Calgary Flames, played in just 1 game at that time. He actually got an assist in that game. And then last year, no points in 2 games with the Detroit Red Wings. That's it. Just 3 career NHL games. I almost wonder, too, if, he's obviously been in the Red Wings organization for a pretty long time now, so 5 years with the AHL team. I almost wonder if toward the end of this past season, maybe they just decided to cut the guy a break and call him up to the NHL for a couple of games. I mean, he's been there for half a decade, has never been able to crack the lineup in the NHL, and obviously the Red Wings were going to be going to the playoffs, so I wonder if that has something to do with it. But yeah, I mean, either way, I think it's kind of the same situation with Elson as it is with Welinski. I think the Rangers probably just see him as organizational depth, somebody that can be a solid AHL player for the Hartford Wolf Pack, potentially one of the leaders of that team for, once again, some of the younger guys who are considered big-time prospects, because at this point, Elson's 29. I don't think we can really call him a prospect anymore. Again, you never know what can happen. Somebody can always kind of break through late in their career and carve out a nice little role for themselves. I think, once again, though, the odds probably against it. But yeah, think of him as sort of being in the Johnny Brodzinski mold. That's kind of what I'm doing here. He's someone you can probably call up to the NHL in a pinch, but it's also a case where I don't think the Rangers have any grand plans for him. But this signing, once again, just fine for what it is. It's organizational depth. It's someone who has enjoyed at least some success in the AHL, and it adds another veteran player to the Hartford Wolf Pack. I wonder if maybe he would be an alternate captain this season coming up. Johnny Brodzinski's probably got the captaincy on lockdown at this point, but I wonder if he would wear the A with the Wolf Pack. We'll keep our eye on that, and we'll see, and we'll check in periodically with the Wolf Pack from time to time throughout the season anyway. Obviously, most of the focus is always going to be on the Rangers, but certainly we will not ignore the Wolf Pack and whatever's happening with them. So, yeah, a couple of nice signings for the Rangers. They make sense. Obviously, not very expensive, and just give you a little bit more organizational depth and a couple of veterans to lead the way for the players on the Hartford Wolf Pack. Couple other little pieces of news here before we call it a day. Tyler Motte is still unsigned. We're almost a week into free agency now. Tyler Motte has yet to sign with anyone. I'm going to keep mentioning it. I don't know how likely it is that he's back with the Rangers, but we're going to have a little bit of fun with this, and I'm just going to keep throwing it out there. Every single episode that we do where he's still not signed, I'm going to at least mention it at the end of every single episode. And speaking of players who, aren't really signed right now, Kaapo Kakko, a restricted free agent, still needs a new contract. No word yet as far as progress there or what the Rangers might look to do with Kaapo Kakko, but we'll see. My guess, once again, is that he probably comes in on a contract, some kind of a bridge contract at about $2.2, $2.3 million per season. Another reminder for everybody to send me your Artemi Panarin Game 7 stories. We will be doing this in a future episode. Basically, I just want to hear your stories. I want to hear from you guys. I'm going to read the stories on a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Who were you with when Panarin scored in overtime of Game 7 against the Penguins? How did you celebrate? Did you think the Rangers would win that game? Etc., etc. Just tell me the story in your words, and I'll read them once again on a future episode. That's going to be a lot of fun. Reminder also to subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers on YouTube. And something else that I want to mention here, every season we do Locked On New York Rangers Fantasy Hockey, and it's a 20-team league because there's enough interest. That's as high as Yahoo will let us go. You can't do more than 20 teams. Otherwise, I probably would. But yeah, it's always a lot of fun every season. Everybody who played last year, you have first dibs on reclaiming your spot for this year. I'll obviously give everybody a little bit of time. I'll drop reminders here and there, and everybody who played last year, once again, you're more than welcome to play again this year. After a certain amount of time, I'll open it up to anybody who did not play last year who would like to play this year. So you can, if you didn't play last year, you can email me now to kind of save your spot in line. And as far as everybody that played last year, email me. Your spot is secure no matter what. Eventually, we will open it up to people that did not play last year, however. And another piece of news, John Davidson inducted into the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame. So a big congratulations to former Ranger goalie and former Ranger color analyst John Davidson. Obviously a really cool honor. That will pretty much do it for today, though, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. In our next episode, we're going to talk about some standouts from the New York Rangers development camp. Now make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast.